Welcome to Sturdy Belt and Holster Company channel. This is Dave. In this video, I'm going to illustrate how I design and make a appendix carry holster for a Kahr CW45. I filmed a whole bunch of this video today, and like an idiot, I forgot to turn my microphone on. So I'm out in my garage right now. It's evening time, and I'm just narrating over what I previously recorded. So, as I mentioned, this will be a holster for a Kahr CW45. You could make it for any holster, really, or any gun that you have. The principles will apply. This just happens to be for a Kahr, and I'll just sort of talk about what I'm doing as I'm doing it. The first thing I always do when I start a new holster design is I'll just take a piece of printer paper and fold it in half, and that will be my center line where I'll place the gun, as you see there. I try to keep the muzzle of the gun off of the edge of the paper, maybe a 1/16 of an inch or so, just to ensure that the muzzle is going to be protected by the leather of the holster. Once the gun looks like it's more or less centered, I will flop it over onto its side. And then with a pencil, I'll do my best to trace around, and without trying to wobble the gun too much. So there I have the outline of the shape of the gun that I'm going to be making the holster for. The first thing that I tend to do when I'm designing a new holster is I like to get my clearance for my hand. When I'm grasping the gun, I want to ensure that there's enough space for my knuckles to grab hold of the handle, to grab hold of the grip, and not come into interference at all with the holster. It's a real pet peeve of mine if your hand comes into contact with a holster when you're drawing your gun. You know, if it happens once or twice, it's not that big of a deal. But if you're out at the range and you're shooting a couple hundred rounds, and every time you draw your gun, you have to come into contact with your holster, it's a real annoyance. So it's something that I try to be careful of in my design. That's what I'm talking about there. I'm just showing that I want to leave enough space where my hand can grab the gun fully and not touch any of the leather, any of the holster at all. So I'll just sort of make a mental note of where I want my holster line to start. And here I am just making the mark with my pencil, and that I know is enough space for my hand to grip. Okay, and so here I am drawing my curve that is going to become part of the back spacer of the gun. And here I am just putting a little curve on the sweat guard portion. This is going to keep the gun from rubbing up against your skin and keeping you protected from the side of the gun. After I've drawn out where the sweat shield will go, I like to establish or mark out my stitch lines. And the way I do that, you see I have the ruler up against the trigger guard there. I take a measurement for how wide that is, and the general rule of thumb is basically half of the width you can set your stitch line away. And I like to add just a little bit, like a 16th or even an 1/8, just to give yourself a little extra room. So I'm going down. Okay, so here I am just sort of getting the rough shape of the holster. Sort of hard to see there, but I've put in my stitch line using the rule of thumb of half the width of the gun, and here I am just sort of making what the side of the holster is going to look like. Right here, this might be a little bit hard to understand, but in the same drawing, I've got what the back of the holster with that sweat shield that I've drawn with that little curve on top, and the line that I just drew is going to be for the front of the holster. So the front and the back of the holster are both sort of contained in the same drawing. It's just sort of how I do it. I'm just I don't like any sharp corners in my design, so there I'm just using a circle stencil to round out a corner. This will become more clear in a little bit. This holster is going to have a steel clip that's fastened to the very front, so you can wear it inside your waistband. And there I was just sort of mocking up where I want that clip to sit on the front. Okay, so with the paper folded over in half like it is, I just take a pair of scissors and I carefully trace out my pattern. Just would add that it's important to take your time. I've got the speed up a little bit on the video clip here, but take your time to do it, because what you end up with is will affect your leather. So because one side of this is for the back and one side is for the front, I'm trimming off one of those tabs that was sticking up, so that's going to be my front, and that's going to be my back. Okay, so here in crazy high speed, I am figuring out the pattern for my clip. My steel clip is going to be held in place by a piece of leather that will be stitched onto the front, and a little portion of it will be stitched onto the back. I'm just drawing this little piece out right now, and you'll see in a little bit what that piece will look like, because I'll be cutting it out. Again, I don't want any sharp corners, so I'm using a circle stencil. Okay, so there's my two pieces. This is also going to be shown in high speed, just to speed it up. I've labeled my pattern, which is a good thing to get into. A good habit to get into, is so that you don't have this random pattern lying around your shop. You forget what it's for. And I cut out my main portion. Over to the side there, I've also drawn out that front piece that's going to hold the steel clip, and you'll see that in a second. Don't ever worry about using ink when you're drawing out your patterns, because when you bevel your edge, all that ink is going to disappear. If you can cut with a single cut rather than multiple cuts, it's always better, because your edge is going to be cleaner. I think my blade's getting a little bit dull, so I had to work at it a bit. But there's my two pieces. And okay, continuing with the high speed way of showing this, I'm just going around that little front piece that's going to hold my steel clip with a stitch groover. Just make sure it fits there okay. Right there I'm making two little spots with my pen, because I don't want to burnish, or rather I don't want to bevel that front piece just yet. burnishing by hand with a little glycerin soap. I'm just using my awl to prick holes where I want that clip to go, and then I'm making a little slit where the clip will go in, and I also rivet that clip into place with a small rivet. Alright, so we're back. A couple things. This piece right here, I'm going to punch a little hole so that I can rivet the end. You can see on the steel clip there's a little hole there. I'm going to rivet that into the leather, just to add a little extra security in positioning that clip. I don't think this clip's ever going to come out when it's stitched in there, but I'll just add a rivet as well. So I made a mark where I want to put my hole. And there's the hole for the rivet. Before we rivet this in place, I'm going to dye this piece black. The holster is going to be a black holster, and I want to dye it now because if I dye it afterwards with this clip in place, it's a real pain to get dye underneath the clip, because once this clip is here, you know, getting a dauber or something into that space is a bit of a pain, so it's just easier to do it now. So I'm just using Fibing's black professional oil dye. I just apply the dye by little tiny circles at first. Then after I've done that, I'll go over with straight strokes. 2, 3, 4 coats of this black tends to be enough. Black is a tricky dye to work with. This oil dye is actually not bad at all. It seems to fairly easily provide a good coat, good look. Dye always kind of looks bad when you first apply it, but after you've taken it to the buffer and put some different finishing coats on there, it all sort of comes together in the end. So don't be discouraged if you put dye on a piece and it kind of doesn't look awesome right away. Okay, so there's that piece dyed. And of course it's smart to wear latex gloves when you're doing this. I just happened to have used my last pair yesterday, so I need to go to Harbor Freight and get some more. Set that aside for a minute. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to establish my stitching line onto our main holster pattern here. So if you recall, I took this little awl tool and I pricked some holes into the pattern. I'm just going to right now establish where my stitch is going to go. Most stitch grooving that you're going to do using a tool like this, where you run the edge of the tool along the edge of your leather, and then you can adjust how much you want to cut into the leather with this
piece here that slides. For an organic shape that is set within the leather itself, you need to use a tool like this, which is like a free-form leather grooving tool. Which is what I'm going to use here to make a groove for my stitch. I'll just very carefully sort of connect the dots. Creating a stitch groove just makes your work look a little bit neater. It allows the thread to lay down into the leather, and it protects the thread. It just gives a more professional looking look to it when it's all said and done. Also, you know, the thread that you use for leather work is a lot thicker than what you'd see in most common uses. So allowing it to sit down is just better. So, you know, we're going to be here in a short order. We're going to be stitching this piece onto our holster, and I'm just going to real simply scratch a little bit here where I know that piece goes. Scratching the leather up like this just gives the glue a chance to grab onto something, so I just use my awl tool and scrape it up. What we'll do now is put our clip into the slit we cut. There we've got the clip inside of our leather piece, and I'm just going to put a rivet just to ensure that that's held together properly. I'm using these little tiny rivets. I'll be setting the rivet with the rivet setting tool here. Pretty simple. Just make sure it's lined up right and give it a squeeze. You can see that set that rivet pretty neatly. We're gonna glue this piece now onto our main holster piece, and we're gonna glue it and we're gonna stitch it. So because this is such a small little piece and I don't need to really use a whole lot of glue, I'm going to just use a Q-tip to apply the glue. Okay, that's just lightly tacked on there. And then we'll go over to the sewing machine. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so there you have it. Sewing machine is a Cobra Class 4 from Leather Machine Company. It's black pro bonded nylon thread, size 277. The needle I'm using is size 25, and the leather that I'm using here in this holster is 7 to 8 ounce veg tan leather from Wickett and Craig. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. Of course, this portion still has not been beveled yet. All of this has been beveled and burnished. After we sand this portion again, we'll come back with a bevel tool and put a bevel on there and finish that edge. So we'll wet this down, fold it over. That's sort of what our holster is going to look like. This back piece here up against the body. Okay, so now we're going to the step that I like to do at this point in the operation of making the holster is I'm going to put my maker's mark onto the holster now. I had this stamp made. I think the company that did it was called Infinity Stamps. Seems to have worked out pretty well. This is a little trick that I use. Instead of just casing the leather, as you can see, I've wet the leather where I'm going to put the stamp. This is a little trick that I learned from Ian Atkinson, which I think actually does a pretty good job, or a better job than just that. Is I'll take my heat gun and I'll run a little bit of heat onto the face of the stamp first. It's a little bit like stamping and branding at the same time. You can overdo the heat, as I've discovered, and it creates kind of a burnt look that is kind of ugly. So just from trial and error, you'll figure out how much heat to put on that. It's generally okay. So, I want my logo to go just about right there. This is just a little, I think it's a half-ton arbor press that I have. And there's my maker's mark. So, yeah, I think that's a pretty good way of doing that. A little tip that I came across on YouTube. There's one YouTube channel that I like. He's a gentleman. I think he goes. His channel name is Tinker John, all one word, and he's got a lot of YouTube videos about ham radio, and he's also a hobby machinist. He's got a machine shop in his garage, and he YouTubes little machine shop projects that he does. One modification that he made to his arbor press that I thought was really clever. He took the face of the arbor press off and removed this ram with the sort of gears in the gears in the back, and he, at the very bottom, he took an angle iron and he ground off the last two teeth on the gears. And what that enables him to do is to sort of ratchet. He can always get this arm positioned the way he wants, so it's not at a weird angle. Like, you're not pulling like this, or it's not like oriented down here. He can always like back it up using the sort of a ratcheting movement and get this arm into the ideal position so that he's got the best leverage all the time. So I don't know if you have an arbor press and you have trouble with that very thing, go check out his channel, Tinker John. Pretty good channel. Okay, so we're at the point now where we've folded the leather over and we're going to put our stitch in. I previously established this one stitch groove, and then I just went right now and I put in this secondary groove using my stitch groove tool, which is this tool right here. This tool right here just ran along the edge and put in that stitch groove. To get this leather to fold over nicely where I could get things lined up pretty much, I just took a sponge and I wet the inside middle part of the leather, both the inside and the outside, gave it a little bit of water so it folds over nicely. Then I just took a little bit of glue and glued up these two edges together, and we're ready to stitch. If you're using a sewing machine, it's important that you figure out sort of your sewing path, because if I were to go straight down this edge here, I don't have enough room, enough material for my foot to walk on. So when I do this outside bit, I've got to be going like that up so that so the foot's got something to walk on. So I will go down and then back up. I'll turn around here and then come back up. It'll make more sense, I think, when you see it. It's going to go straight down. When I come back around, I'll go over, create sort of a loop, and lock in my stitching that way. What's nice about this machine is it runs off a servo motor, which allows you to go as slowly as you need to go. Some sewing machines are so fast they'll run away on you, but you have real good control with this setup. Okay, so I've reached the end of my line, and I'll come back up the other side. And then just coming around here like this, I'm locking in the stitch. Okay. Okay, so we just dunk it into some warm water and we just leave it in there until bubbles stop rising to the surface. You can see there's quite a few bubbles still coming up, so I'll take it out in, I don't know, 3 minutes is usually long enough. So we're back after a full night of letting the holster dry. If you recall, we wet the entire holster in the sink in some warm water and saturated the leather until no more bubbles came out of the holster. And then after the leather rested for maybe 15-20 minutes, I put the blue gun into the holster and kind of worked it a little bit so that it's a good formed fit to the pistol, to the dimensions of the pistol. And I let it sit overnight and dry. Now we're just about finished with the holster. The only thing we need to do is just finish dyeing in our finishing coats and finish our edges, and the holster's done. So there's really not much to do. I just thought as I do the remaining few steps to complete the holster, I thought I'd film that as well and show you the whole process from start to finish. So let's finish dyeing this. If you recall, I mentioned that I was out of those latex gloves that I typically wear when I'm doing this dye work. I still haven't managed to get over to Harbor Freight to buy a new box, so I'm probably going to get some dye on my hands, but I'll just be as careful as I can. I like to dye the inside of the holster as well as the outside. I just think it looks better. Not everyone may agree with me, but I think the finished product looks a little bit better when the inside and outside are both black, so I'll do that. Not too bad. Could have been worse. So, done pretty quickly. I know that there's some holster makers out there that use the dunking method for dyeing their holsters. It's a little bit faster. You'll just have a big bucket of dye, of black dye or something, and you just sort of dip the whole holster in and take it out, and it's done. I started out using daubers and applying the dye this way, so I've just continued to do that. Doesn't take too long. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. So I'll just let that dry a little bit. After the piece has been dyed, I like to give it a good buffing. I've just got this buffing wheel chucked up in my drill press. So I'll show you a sort of a before and after. So there's the before it's been buffed. There's an after. Hopefully the camera can pick up the difference. As I've mentioned in a previous holster making video, I'm a huge fan of this product here, this Carnauba cream. I think it's wonderful for leather. I think it just sort of rejuvenates the leather really nicely, and I like how it interacts with the dye and creates a nice effect with your dye. So I'll just take a piece of cloth, put a little bit of Carnauba on there, and I'll rub it into the leather. One thing I should mention about this is it's not a great like weather protector. So don't treat this like a something that's gonna allow it to stand up to moisture, because it really doesn't do that. It just sort of conditions the leather and sort of rejuvenates it and helps the dye sort of penetrate into the leather well. So after this, we'll add a second something else that will allow it to withstand moisture better. Okay, now that we've rubbed in a good amount of the Carnauba, it's time to finish our edges. So just dampen up the edge slightly. I personally like to use a little bit of glycerin soap when I burnish, so just put a little bit of that on there. Okay. We are back over at the drill press once again, and I'm just gonna burnish my edges. Creates a pretty nice edge. Okay, we're just gonna put some edge paint onto our edges. It's just Fibing's edge coat, black. I just apply it with a Q-tip.
The last step we're going to add is adding the acrylic Resolene.
Okay, so I just wanted to show the finished product. Here's the finished holster. It's got the acrylic Resolene on it. It's going to create a nice sort of barrier against moisture. I think the holster turned out really well. It's got a really nice fit. You can see that there's enough space in our design so that when you grab hold of the pistol, you can see that it's not interfering with my hand at all. Like, I can't feel the holster at all, but I've got a really good, close, tight grip on the gun. So that's one aspect of in designing a holster that's sort of important to me. And then the fit is also really nice. I think we did a good job with establishing our stitch line so that the gun comes right up against the stitch. You have to do a few holsters to sort of figure out how to get that done, but it's quite doable. And again, if you want to make a holster like this yourself for your pistol, everything that we did you can easily do yourself. It's just a matter of hand stitching. I might go over some hand stitching stuff in the future. A really good channel if you're interested in hand stitching is to check out Leotis Leather. The guy's name is Ian Atkinson. Really good leather crafter, and he makes a lot of sheaths for knives, and he shows a lot of stitching by hand. I've done it, but I've just sort of moved on to a sewing machine. It's a lot faster, but you can totally do this yourself and hand stitch if you want. So I'm really pleased with how it turned out. I think the customer is going to be happy with it. This is, you know, obviously meant for appendix carry, so this is going to be worn with a clip towards the front, and it holds the pistol really well. It'll loosen up a little bit. Holsters are always a little bit snug, a little bit tight when you first get them, and there's a little bit of a break-in period. But yeah, I think this holster is going to work out really well for whoever ends up getting it. So, all right, thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel if you've not already done so. Like this if you like it, and as always, I do appreciate any comments or feedback that you might have. If there's a way you do this that's different from the way I'm doing it, I'd love to hear how you do it. I'm always open to suggestions and ideas. So thank you so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye.